Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Saturday, December 28th. This is episode 44 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. It is week 17. We've almost made it here to the end of the regular season. 3 games already happened this week, and there's a good chance some of you might not even have known that 3 games took place this week. That's how bad the games were. 2 really poor matchups on Christmas Day. Good teams, just bad games. And Thursday, I don't even know if we want to talk about that massacre of a game. 6-3 Seahawks over the Bears. That was ugly. But hopefully today's slate here on a Saturday is good. 3 games coming up tomorrow. Obviously another full slate, and then Monday as well. So a lot to get into. DiMari, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Sorry for those who can't see me too well. My camera quality the last few weeks have been pretty bad, but not as bad as that 63 game
Yeah.
on Thursday of watching Caleb Williams and Geno Smith attempt to play football, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, a pretty big week. We got some pretty big matchups, especially we have an NFC North matchup that with a lot of implications. Vikings trying to stay alive for the 1 seed in a division, and we got some stinkers this week. Had some stinkers this past week. Well, Christmas with some games, but a lot of big games, meaningful games. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. It's ugly. Thursday night was awful. That was just like it was like nails on it. It was just a grind, like nails on a chalkboard. Watching that game made you like cringe. It was just such bad football. And it's another one of these days as an NFL fan where we've actually gotten some good Thursday night games this year, I will say. Like the Bengals Ravens game about a month ago now.
Yeah,
That game
that was
was
pretty
really,
good.
really good. Um, but it's another one of these things, and even I think the Christmas Day games just show the fact that these teams struggle on these short weeks. Like you go for the Christmas Day teams, they went from Sunday to Saturday to then Thursday. They played 3 games in 11 days. You have the Thursday night games, they're short rest. They're never at their best. They're never fully like I think it would be better. This is a whole nother debate for another day, but it would just be better to me to add more games on Sunday and take away the Thursday game, or maybe instead just have 2 Monday night games all year as opposed to Thursday night. The whole Thursday night thing, just a lot of times, at least 3 times a year, you get a game like that. That's just an absolute clunker. And you don't really blame the players in a way because they've got 3 days to prep. They've got barely any practice, especially for the road team. It's even harder because you have to travel that Wednesday. So you play a game Sunday, you're traveling, and then 2 days later. It doesn't. It's usually a recipe at times for a disaster, and that was the whole Thursday thing. And I guess you could bring up the whole potential play Saturday, but the thing with that is then you're conflicting with college football. Not that that means a ton. I mean, NFL is king, but viewership wise, you might get more on a Thursday. I don't know. But either way, that's just a little opening take there. We could start with the Christmas Day games. We got a lot to discuss today on the podcast. Um, I guess we could start with the Steelers and the Chiefs since it happened first. And I want to get more into the Steelers, and we both obviously have some thoughts on them. This was a game where it was close there for a little while. I mean, it was one of these games where the Steelers obviously weren't playing their best brand of football. They were obviously struggling. It was a little bit of grind, but they were in it, right? You go into the fourth quarter, they were only down 16-10. Russ had the touchdown to make it 13-7 before the half, or in the second quarter to go into halftime down 13-7. So if it wasn't for that, you're probably looking at, 13 up the first half. They were struggling, but it wasn't horrible. And in the fourth quarter, the wheels completely fell off. You got the Kareem Hunt, touchdown. Travis Kelce, the touchdown as well. 29-10. Before you know it, you're down 2 scores. More than that, 3 scores. So just what was your thoughts on this one? Another Chiefs win. Another Chiefs win without scoring 30 points. And they're the 1 seed, 15-1.
Yeah, so this Steelers team, the last 3 weeks, is the team we thought they were going to be all season.
Yeah.
Where struggle to score on offense. Defense has been surprisingly bad too. I mean, it doesn't really show it too much on the scoreboard. It's the whole Kansas City. I mean, everyone's doing it, I guess, but the whole Kansas City under 30, but the offense can't score. They haven't scored 20 points in 3 weeks, which is when they've lost 3 straight games. I know Pickens is like didn't play in 2 of those games, but what we're seeing is what we thought they would have been all season long, and it just kind of sucks for them where you're looking at the playoff race, and at this time of the season where obviously Cincinnati can't catch up to them, but Cincinnati's heating up, and you have Baltimore and Lamar continuously putting on MVP performances, and they're winning games. How they're winning, I mean, they went and smacked Houston in the face on Christmas Day. It's a bad time to go cold. Like, it's a very bad time. And for Pittsburgh, you had the division. Feels like it was in your grasp because when you were playing, Cincinnati, you're getting Baltimore, you had their number. And now you're playing these other teams, these AFC teams, where you need these wins more than anything because these are most important outside of division games when you get into the playoffs and you're stinking it up. So now, outsider like myself, maybe you're kind of looking like, is this team actually good enough if they go on the road in Arrowhead and they play them again? If they have to go to Baltimore on the road, will they win? Even if they have to go out to LA and play the Chargers, are they good enough? This team it's been like a tale of 2 different teams, but this Pittsburgh team we've seen the last 3 weeks, I just don't think they're good enough to win a playoff game.
Yeah, I agree. This just feels like all the makings of another Steelers wild card exit, similar to last year, where last year was a little bit different, though. I mean, they were 7-7 and they won 3 straight at the end of the year to get to the playoffs. This year, they're falling apart late in the season, but it just screams another 10-win season. Another one, they've gone 9-8 a ton. They had the 2021, they went 9-7-1. They got blown out by Kansas City in the wild card round. It just feels like another first round exit type of team. I mean, they didn't look good. And we said this for a while. And when we talked about it, that this stretch of games after their bye week would be very, very important, right? They started with Washington, then Baltimore, then Cleveland, Cincy, Cleveland, and now Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City. And right now, after going 4-1 through the first 5 games, they're now 4-4 through this stretch. And now they get a Bengals team next week that's playing very, very well, like you mentioned. The previous time they played Cincy, they were not playing their best ball. Now they're really starting to turn it on a little bit more. Defense is playing slightly better. They've got a big game coming up today, actually, against the Broncos, which is huge in terms of playoff implications. But now you get Cincy next week. Bengals team that's potentially looking at a win-and-in scenario if they get some help. You're looking at probably 10-7, limp into the playoffs. You get the 5 seed. As of right now, they're at the 5 seed. That 5-4 game between them and the Texans is going to be really, really interesting because you have a Texans team right now that looks terrible, and you have a Steelers team right now that looks terrible. I think this is just the Steelers have kind of reached their peak. I think earlier in the year, not taking anything away from them, but they were beating up on teams that aren't very good. They beat the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants, even way earlier in the year, right? They beat the Falcons. They beat the Broncos in week 2. Bo Nix, just his second game before he really started to have things click. And then even post-bye, I mean, you kind of look back on it. They barely beat Baltimore. They only beat Washington by 1. You get down the stretch here. The Cleveland loss was ugly. Now you face really, really good teams at the top of the conference, both Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City in their respective conferences, and it's getting ugly. I don't know. We talked about at the beginning of the season that we didn't think Russ would do a whole lot, and I don't think this is all on Russ, but the offense is just not good enough right now. I mean, he didn't play particularly well against Kansas City. It's kind of they're back to being this Steelers team that's kind of boring, rely too much on their defense, and their offense can't elevate them to the teams like Baltimore, to a team like Kansas City. I was riding with the Steelers, but I think the wheels are. I agree. I think the wheels are falling off. I mean, this was a team that a couple weeks ago you probably look at it and say they can make a run. Now you look at it. Do they even get past Houston now on the road? I mean, they blew the division. It feels a little bit like what happened to Philly last year. All this losing down the stretch. A little bit different, but they might lose 4 straight down the stretch. You're going to go into the playoffs and get blown out. It's possible.
For Pittsburgh's sake, I mean, and I know we're going to get into it later kind of with the playoff picture, but for Pittsburgh's sake, I mean, I think you want to sit at that 5 spot. I think out of how everything's lining up
Yeah.
right now, it is ideal for you to go into Houston where we're talking about how bad Pittsburgh has been. I know we're going to get into Houston next, but
Yeah.
that's not a real football team. They got some injuries, they got a lot of things going on, but best bet for Pittsburgh, and that it's just get in and see what you do. You just want to get to the dance. So yeah, maybe you do get in, you go into Houston. You should win that game. I mean, I think 1,000
Yeah.
times right now, looking at both teams, I'm taking Pittsburgh over Houston. You go in there, you get a win, you kind of get ready for that second week of the divisional playoffs. Don't know who you might face, but it's really just about gaining momentum as you get through. So yes, they are on a slump, and you mentioned with Philly last year, but for Pittsburgh's sake now, you kind of don't want to drag these last few weeks and that lack of momentum and that lack of like excitement and just eagerness because you fumbled the division carries over into the playoffs, and now you're gonna put up a playoff stinker to a Houston team that you should easily beat by 2 possessions with how bad they've been looking. But it's a tough situation. Like you said, this was a team where it's kind of getting back to the roots where, hey, if we just hold our opponents to under 25, we should be able to win some games. But it's like, hey, you guys can't score either. Again, you have not scored 20 points in 3 straight weeks. After that last Cincinnati game where you scored 44, everyone's like, oh my goodness, look at Pittsburgh. We've never seen the offense this good. Like, where's this coming from? And then it's back to reality. They got to figure it out quick. And again, so they're going to get a little break. I guess Sunday they're going to be scoreboard watching. But then you get a Cincinnati team who is, like we both said, hot. Defense has been playing better. We already know what the offense has been. So you just don't want to continue to slip up and slip up and slip up. But I think at this point, if they can stay 5, go play Houston. Anybody other than Houston, I just don't see them making it to the second round.
Yeah. No, yeah, you make a good point there. And I agree with that in terms of if there was a team right now that they would play, it would be that they're better off playing. It would be Houston. And you could actually make the case, yeah, winning the division would actually hurt them because then as of right now, they'd have to play the Chargers. They're not beating the Chargers. With the way they're playing, they would probably not beat the Chargers. Now you would get into a situation where if you win against Houston, you'd probably have to either play Buffalo or probably Buffalo because I most likely Baltimore would beat the Chargers and then Buffalo would beat Denver as of right now. So then you would be the lowest seed remaining to go and play Buffalo. But I could see the Chargers potentially pulling off an upset, and we'll see, of course, when that all falls down. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But like I don't see them going much further. I don't than beating Houston and then getting their doors blown off against a Baltimore, a Buffalo, somebody like that, it's just they got to figure they need a long-term answer at quarterback. They need, and that's the problem is they're never bad enough to draft a quarterback, but they need, like they tried to do it with Kenny Pickett in the middle of the first round 2 years ago and it didn't work out. They need a long-term answer like this Justin Fields, this Russell Wilson 1-year thing, bringing Russ back next year. They need their offense is behind. It's, I just think now this time of year is really where Super Bowl contenders, things like that kind of separate themselves from pretenders, I guess. And I think you're starting to see that where they just look terrible against Baltimore, look terrible against Philly on the road, at home against Kansas City on Christmas Day. I mean, if you can't get up and play for that game, then I don't know what else to tell you there.
And, I mean, no offense, but I agree with your point. It's just the offense is so outdated because there's nobody there. I mean, you get Pickens, who requires a lot of attention. Freiermuth has been having a pretty decent year, but it's just like Calvin Austin. Outside of George Pickens, who is going to step up and make an impact? They have not been running the ball too well, and they're trying this, 1-2 system with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, where it's like whichever guy has the hot hand that's who we're going to kind of go with throughout the game. Sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not, because one back can't seem to find momentum whatsoever, and the other one has all the momentum. And right now it's Jalen Warren's time. So with that being said, they can't establish a run game. So now we're forcing Russ to drop back and throw the ball, 30, 35, 38 times, which is ideally not what you want, especially with the weapons around him. So with that offense, I mean, it's basically like live and die by George Pickens. If George Pickens is going, the offense is going, everything looks well, everyone is kind of rallying behind Pickens, everyone plays better. But when George Pickens isn't on the field or he's not playing great, he can't get open. Not only is he on the attitude fighting athletic trainers or whatever the case is his day, but just nobody else is good enough to kind of step up and like elevate their game. And we've never seen Russ have that. The one time we did, let me rephrase, that has not been, Russ's ideal type of play style up until in Denver, where it was awful. But Seattle, he always had weapons. He always had the guys that can step up and rally behind him. Right now, they don't have that. And looking at every team in the AFC playoff picture, this might sound crazy, even including the Chargers. The Steelers have the worst core of weapons when it comes to 1 through 7. And that's just my opinion.
100%. Even I would say even worse than Houston, probably, who's missing Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. Because I think you could probably make the case Nico Collins is better than Pickens. And I would
over Harris.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. They're old school. Like, they're just an old school offense. Even Najee Harris, I would say, is more like an old, I don't know. He's not, he doesn't give off that same elite speed running back modern day vibe as other guys do. It's weird. Like, he's more of a lower shoulder grindy type of back that kind of just is physical, not really definitely not like your Saquon Barkleys of the world, where you could you could catch out of the backfield really well. You hurdling people, not backwards, all that stuff. Like, just Najee Harris doesn't have that same burst. Even James Cook, with the Bills, just to give an AFC example, he's a guy that I think significant burst, high yards per carry. Like, Najee Harris is not a huge yards per carry guy, yards per attempt. And I think that hurts them as well. I know in this game he had 5.7 yards per attempt. He had that 120-yard run. But then that affects them too, is that they don't get many big chunk plays from their run game. So you're asking Russ basically throw it up, throw those lobs that he likes to throw and hope George Pickens is down there somewhere, or you're left with Freiermuth, who's solid. But then, you get to the Calvin Austins of the world. I mean, you get Connor Hayward, rather. Like Mike Williams, who outside of that Washington game hasn't done anything. He's got
honestly
the jet curse.
God, Mike Williams was on the team. That just goes to show you there's there's nothing. Like, is Van Jefferson still on the team? Like, I feel like one of those people who don't actually watch ball, and I'm just like, what's going on? But it's just the fact that you can't name anyone because no one's been doing anything. I mean, outside of that offense, and you kind of look at it, there's George Pickens, there's Jalen Warren, there's Freiermuth here and there. There's nobody else. And then it's the rest of the pool.
Yeah. No, I agree. And they tried new offensive coordinator this year. They bring in Arthur Smith, and it's still kind of stagnant.
It's Arthur Smith. But I do want to make another point, too, about Najee that you pointed out. That makes a lot of sense. With him being so one-dimensional, I feel like it hurts the offense just so much more. And I know Derrick Henry isn't your typical, get in there, catch 5-6 passes type of guy. But he's just so effective on the ground. It kind of doesn't matter. But when you do look at Najee, and James Cook is a perfect example, who is not the best runner. He's not a great typical running back. He's more of a scat back. You look at Chase Brown. That's another one. Najee is so behind the curve when it comes to like your typical day running backs, because these guys now, I mean, Saquon, probably not the best example. Saquon's like a unicorn almost. But we're going to stick with Cook. We're going to stick with Chase Brown, where they'll get in there. They'll give you 14 for 80, but they're going to give you 6 catches, 60 yards. And it's just
even
that.
Gibbs.
Gibbs is another one. Perfect one. Montgomery has changed from that traditional kind of, 3 down back. Everything's going to be ground and pound. Let me expand and, trying to catch out the backfield. With Pittsburgh and Russ and just the whole offensive dynamic, It's like, okay, you got Najee. He's going to give you that first and second down play. Third down, Jalen Warren. Well, guess what we're doing? We're throwing the ball. It's so simple and so like you can almost guess what's going on. And until Najee, and I'm not saying he's the whole problem with the offense, and neither are you, but until he kind of expands his play style and what he can bring to the offense, they're going to continue to struggle because he's not that great of a runner. He's not that great of a pass catcher. They're not that great of a passing team. So it's like a lose situation all over for that offense.
Yeah, 100%. It feels like Najee Harris would be like a really good third down back, like a number 2, but they're trying to use him as like a number 1.
Yeah.
And it's like ideally, I think like best case scenario for them would be like Jalen Warren would be like your, I guess your Gibbs or your do it all back, like a James Cook or somebody like that. And then Najee would be more your number 2, but that's just not how it is. I mean, it's just a very outdated offense. It's a very boring, old offense. I mean, that's part of it where it's, you saw what they were without Pickens. They were terrible. You add Pickens back into the mix and they're still struggling. I don't know. I still think they need like a legitimate quarterback, and maybe they go all in on Darnold, maybe, or somebody like that. We'll see. I don't know. Trade for somebody. But other than that, I mean, you roll with this core. Week 1 next year, playoff game this year, no team's going to be really scared of this offense. Not at all. Maybe a couple weeks ago, but not now. And I think the real talent, facing really good teams and really good defenses, because the Chiefs defense doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's the ugly side of this offense, the ugly side of this team starting to rear its head. So that's the Steelers angle, I guess. I guess we can move on. I mean, what more is there to say about the Chiefs? They're 15-1. I saw this stat the other day, after the game. Let me pull it up here. So teams to score 30 points or fewer in each game this season. The Chiefs are 14-1 in games they've done that. Now they're 14-1. The Patriots are 3-12. Raiders are 3-12. Giants are 2-13. So it just shows you the voodoo magic that the Chiefs have to not score, look terrible in some of these games, and yet they still win. The other 3 teams that are with the Chiefs are the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Giants. And you're looking at top of draft order right there. Then at the top, you're looking at potential Super Bowl back-to-back-to-back three-peat. So I don't know. It's going to come down to the playoffs. Somebody's got to dethrone them. We'll see who that is, if it's anybody.
Yeah, it's not much to say, but I just know whoever they play, when it kind of lines up, that's who I'm going for that week. I'm going to be the biggest, whether that's Buffalo, Baltimore. I don't
Buffalo's
care.
the only one. Only one that I'll root for the Chiefs is Buffalo. I just can't, to me, just cannot stand. I'm sure you understand, but could not stand seeing the Bills win a Super Bowl. Just can't. Nothing against them. Well, maybe something against them, but we all know it's just classic division rival. I just can't. I cannot root for the teams in my division. All those years I rooted against the Patriots every single year. Miami loses in the playoffs first round, so we haven't had to worry about them going deep anywhere. They haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. And the Bills are the other ones, and for a while they were irrelevant, but that's the only one. Other than that, Chiefs, Steelers, Chiefs, Ravens. Give me the Ravens, give me the Steelers, give me the Texans, Chargers, Bengals sneak in, Broncos, heck, the Colts get in. Whoever the heck plays the Chiefs. Whoever the Chiefs cross paths with other than the Bills, it'll be the other team. And I guess the Chiefs Bills would be like, I hope both teams lose.
Yeah, if there's a rule out there, they want to change it.
Yeah.
Game goes to overtime, nobody scores in that 10-minute period, both teams lose, and I'm with that. And
then they give a call to the Jets and say, hey, you're in the Super Bowl.
Get ready. Guess what? We need you to come fill in a spot.
Yeah, need you fill in. But Rodgers is on his retreat already, so they can't find him, can't get in contact with him. So then Tyrod comes out there.
I was going to say Jordan Travis, but that works. Jordan Travis.
Travis too.
takes the blanket off the wheelchair. You know what
Anybody.
I'm referencing, and gets in there.
They might have to give
323 touchdowns.
Yeah, they might have to give me a call at this point.
Why not? I mean, I think anyone go out there and do better than Rodgers right now. You at least you'll be sober doing it, but to each his
That is
each
true.
his own.
Yeah. Anyway, the next one, Ravens Texans. I mean, this was awful. I thought this was going to be, the scoregami. I thought this was going to be a scoregami, but it wasn't. This score has happened 3 times in NFL history, but it's the first time this score has happened since 1965. So it's been a while. The Jets have won a Super Bowl, and man has landed on the moon since that point. So that's a long time ago, 1965. To be honest, and I don't know, just from a visual, losing 30, maybe this is just me, just because we don't see it often. Losing 31-0 looks actually better than losing 31-2. I don't know what it is about the two, but losing 31-2 just sounds so much worse.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, between this one and I know we're talking about the Seahawks and the Bears, but the famous Spider-Man meme of all two, or sometimes it's three all pointing at each other. That's what it kind of felt like this week, where Houston's like, I'm going to score the lowest, and Seattle's like, no, it should be me, and Chicago's like, actually, it's going to be me. Like, let's just see who can score the lowest and just play as bad as possible. But you might as well just opt it out for 0. Just 30, like that 31-2
just looks bad.
It's just embarrassing. And locker rooms, they have, in this case, nobody's happy in that locker room, but locker rooms that have that competitiveness where it's offense versus defense, who can score more. You got outscored by your defense in 60 minutes of football by a safety, not even a touchdown. You can even put up 3 points on the board. Your defense scored 2 points for you. That's pathetic. It's bad.
Make a good point.
It's
I didn't
very
even
bad.
think of it that I didn't even think of it that way. That's a good point. Yeah, it was ugly. It was awful. The Texans look terrible. It's another one of these games where Stroud's running for his life. The offensive line is awful. 5 sacks, and just again, like Tank Dell without him, there's just not enough. It feels like there's not enough separation. This wasn't even a big Nico Collins game. Only 3 catches on 6 targets for 59 yards. It just feels like those injuries are starting to catch up to them, right? No Diggs, not Nico Collins, no Tank Dell. Schultz didn't have a huge game. I think he's got to step up in a bigger role now, kind of where he was last year. He's regressed a little bit. He's got to start to step up. He didn't do much in this game. 6 targets, only 2 catches. I'll be honest, second half, I was like half watching this game. That's how bad it was. So I don't know how many of those don't recall how many of those Schultz drops or Schultz incompletions intended for him. Out of the 6 targets, 4 of them were incomplete. How many of those were drops, bad throws, whatever, PBUs, whatever they were. But 2 catches on 6 targets for a tight end isn't good enough. I mean, like outside of Nico Collins, again, John Mechie had a decent game, 5 catches, 48 yards, but then Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, they get really thin really fast. Now defenses, they went from a 3-headed monster to now basically Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, and that's about it in terms of proven talent. Robert Woods is proven, but he's old. I mean, he's washed. Let's just tell like it is. Dalton Schultz has regressed this year.
He's also washed.
He's also you can make a case he's also washed as well. So I don't know that. Geez, I'm kind of interested just to see what would happen in that Steelers Texans matchup, because that game might be 6-3, honestly.
5-2. I mean,
baby,
obviously everyone's trying to outlow each other, but I mean,
yeah,
and I know we said it last week, kind of when we got close to closing up, and we both mentioned, by the way, ESPN, whoever, NFL Network, we were the first to break Deontay Johnson in Houston, and it happened. I know short week, he definitely wasn't going to play. He needs to get involved. And I'm not saying that from like, oh, well, what did he do? Obviously, he didn't play. He didn't suit up. But when he is, kind of ready to go, I think he has so much to prove, just with how bad things ended in both Baltimore and Pittsburgh, where he was like this absolute locker room cancer. Nobody wants to touch him and those type of things. this is the time where Deontay Johnson can basically rewrite his story, kind of clean up his character, and help a team win. I mean, he's a good receiver. It's all about, they don't need him to step in there, be prime Julio Jones, but it's just to take some pressure off of Stroud and Nico Collins. So Deontay Johnson's going to have to step up in a big way. And I bring that up because, the connection with Pittsburgh, if they do meet, when they do meet, which I think they will in the first round, I like him to have a big game against this, his former team. And he's going to have to carry that on into just the second round. They're losing second round anyways if they end up getting past Pittsburgh. But just to your point where, Woods, Hutchinson, Mechie, somebody has to step up, because for Nico Collins' case, he's going to get a lot of attention. Joe Mixon's actually played probably the worst football over the course of this season, the last few games. Thank you, Joe Mixon, for a fantasy owner like myself who had you in fantasy. Stinker at the wrong time. So he's not playing his best ball. And we're talking about Dalton Schultz, who's never been in my opinion, this is not, coming from a place of hate, former Cowboy Dalton Schultz, but we're talking about a traditional running back in Najee Harris. He's not your traditional athletic tight end. You look at a Jonnu Smith, you look at a Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts, who I know probably forgot how to play football. But Dalton Schultz is not your average catch, turn the ball upfield, break tackles. He's a Jason Witten. If you remember Jason Witten in Dallas, Jason Witten could not break a tackle. Everything was catch, go back a few yards, go down. That Schultz, they just need somebody to step up. And I'm kind of with you. If Pittsburgh and Houston first round, I mean, first team to 8 wins.
Yeah. First team to 2, maybe, or 3. Who even knows? Yes, Jason Witten in Dallas. That's a good comparison. Remember Jason Witten with the Raiders for that 1 year?
That was a canon event that they just had to happen in life.
That was not a real event.
No, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was not real. That did not happen.
No.
The NFL was kind of a simulation back then. 2020, that was a weird year. Just COVID season. Jason Witten with the Raiders. I mean, Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars won week 1, then lost 15 in a row. There was a lot going on that year. You had what else? It was COVID toe with Rodgers. Remember that?
Yep.
That was something else. Brady goes and wins a Super Bowl in year 1 with the Bucs. Cam Newton on the Patriots. What a weird time.
11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, 11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Dallas's defense giving up 45 points per game, but scoring 46. Yeah. It was a time. That was quite a time.
That was remember Juju and the dancing on the logos.
Yep.
And remember when he got killed by Von Bell.
Yep.
Those were some interesting times.
For the younger viewers, old enough to remember Odell. I just want for the younger folks, Odell, Jarvis Landry, who you probably never heard of, and Baker Mayfield. Yes, Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield were all on the same team, and they were still trash.
Yes.
Outside of 1 year, they were good, but they were trash.
Remember the stretch of Odell catch, then Landry catch, and they were every other week, one of them would make a great catch, and it'd be Odell versus Landry. What a time! That was the 2015, 2016 era.
What a time! Miami Dolphins, Jarvis Landry. What a time!
Odell and Landry, best friends. I remember when everybody used to Odell started to become disliked. People started to turn on him a little bit. And then Landry would pick up all of Odell's supporters because they were friends. It was interesting. Odell and Jarvis Landry. Yes, and they were all on the same team together.
Yep. And we're still not that good, but good day. That's when the NFL was good. It meant something. Now it's just
Mahomes throwing it down the field to somebody and the Chiefs winning games 15-13 and going 16-1 and winning the Super Bowl every year. And maybe now it's more of a simulation than anything because it's just the same thing that's happening. The Jets just suck every year still.
after the whole Taylor Swift thing, it was like this is
That
not a real sport
that's
that we're
one thing that hasn't changed through all this. The Jets have sucked through everything we just talked about. They were terrible in 2020. They went 4-12 in 2014. The Baker Mayfield and the Browns days, they were not any good because those were the Darnold years. They went 4-12, 7-9, 2-14 with Darnold. So the one thing that has changed, stayed the same is Jets suck. And I guess, you know,
Well, I was gonna say two things stayed the same because it was still your typical 12-5, first round of the
Cowboys
playoffs.
losing.
Let's
Yeah.
go lose to
I
the
was
49ers.
I was gonna
Yeah.
go there, but I didn't know if I wanted to.
Oh no, it's
With the
it's
Cowboys losing in the playoffs.
yeah, some things never change. It's
No.
still the same story, and
Time
now the
is a flat
timeline shifting a little bit. We're not even making the playoffs, but it
time
is
is
what
a
it
flat
is.
circle.
Yeah.
But anyway, to get back on track, yeah, the Texans, they've got some problems. And you mentioned with the whole Deontay Johnson thing, it's good pickup. We were both, I think you especially were on that, bringing that up. I didn't necessarily think it would. I saw it happening, but I wouldn't totally agree with the move just because of the locker room stuff. But you hope that he can kind of realize, like, look, it's the end of the season. This team needs you. Like, they need you desperately right now. And I think a lot is on the line for Deontay Johnson. If he goes to Houston now and can't make it work, who's gonna want him?
That might be it.
You know,
That
it
honestly
might be
might
it.
be it for him.
It is like if you go to ball and it's two winning teams too, that makes it even worse. It's not like you went from Baltimore traded to Carolina, right? That would be one thing to say I'm unhappy here, but you got traded from Carolina to Baltimore, and now you're getting go from Baltimore didn't trade him, obviously they released him, and now you're signing with the you get claimed by the Texans, like, and I think too the Chargers put in a claim for him as well. I saw so you were either going to the Texans or the Chargers, two teams that are gonna be in the playoffs. Like, why are you? I don't know. This is big for him. If this doesn't work out, this might be it. Because who's going to want him? Like, you just complained on two winning teams. What do you want? So, but hopefully he could just kind of lock in, block out the outside nonsense, and really recognize he's got to help this team, and he gets a chance to do that, and he gets the chance to do it right now in a playoff run. And he could really build his value back up if he comes here and something clicks with him and Stroud and they go deep in this playoffs. So as for Baltimore, I don't think it's ever a good game for the opponent when Josh Johnson gets playing time. And I think that was about exactly what happened here. I mean, just another huge day for Derrick Henry. I'm telling you that I think the Bills to me are the best team, but until somebody proves that they could stop Derrick Henry, he might just run through everybody. He's going to go into Arrowhead and just run through Kansas City. I mean, nobody could stop him.
And what people don't really admit for some odd reason too, as good as Derrick Henry's playing, people kind of forget if Derrick Henry does not have a great game, which is every once in a blue moon. But we've seen some games where Henry hasn't exceeded 80 yards. I can't remember exactly, but there's been a few. So when Henry doesn't have a great game, guess who turns up? Lamar Jackson. And
Yeah.
that's when Lamar Jackson gives you that 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, add 60 on the ground. Like, it's what can you do to stop this team? And credit to Lamar Jackson, because for a while now, it's always like the weapons, the receivers, the receivers. Outside of Zay Flowers, no one's really done too much as a pass catcher that I can that I can honestly think of.
Yeah.
Bateman's had some good games here and there. So it's like Lamar's torching secondaries with not the best group of wide receivers when Derrick Henry is not having great games. So I don't know. I was on the Josh Allen MVP train. Now I don't know. I was unfamiliar with Lamar Jackson's numbers this year, maybe because he wasn't supposed to win it last year. Respectfully, I love Lamar Jackson. Dak Prescott was robbed. But after I seen Lamar's numbers this year, I'm like, Josh Allen's not kind of, a free ticket for MVP. It's gonna be neck and neck.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, 39 touchdowns, 4 picks is crazy. His running ability is obviously second to none. And he already surpassed not Geno Smith. Jeez, Michael Vick. Michael Vick that he already surpassed from a rushing perspective. So it's already in this already this early in his career, which is crazy. You think Derrick Henry should get more consideration though for the MVP?
100%. Yeah,
I think he should. I
absolutely.
think, and Saquon's doing great things. Don't get me wrong, but I think Derrick Henry's name could be right up there with Saquon's right now. Everyone's talking about Saquon. I think in a way Derrick Henry's been a little underrated this year because everyone's talking about Lamar, everyone's talking about Saquon. So he's not even the most talked about player on his team. He's not even the most talked about running back. And then people are talking about Burrow, they're talking about Allen, which I fully agree with those takes. Darnold as well, but Derrick Henry should get at least offensive player of the year,
Yeah.
potentially. Him or Barkley. It's
It's
going to be Saquon, but
it's so tough. It can go.
it,
Me personally, as a voter, I'm not putting a Philadelphia Eagle on my ballot,
yeah,
but like
yeah, that's true.
it's tough. It can go either way.
Yeah. You remember all the takes now? The takes are looking really bad. Remember when everyone's like, "Oh, Saquon Barkley's Derrick Henry's washed." Those takes are looking really ugly right now.
Yeah, or the I don't think he'll fit our system. That's why we didn't call him.
Yeah,
That's an
that's
absolute
true too.
that's a bad take. There's no way no GM slash
That
owner
is
in the NFL
crazy.
looked at Derrick Henry and said he would not be a good fit for your offense. That
That is
has to be a
crazy. They did not sign Derrick Henry.
yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Hey, we want Derrick Henry. We have Derrick Henry at home, and it's Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, I
Yeah.
guess.
Derrick Henry must be so happy right now, though. He went from playing for Will Levis in his rookie year to Lamar Jackson. I mean,
That's almost like you go to the gas station for like the Snickers, you buy a $1 lotto ticket and you scratch
yeah,
it off and you win the lotto. That was
yeah,
Derrick Henry.
pretty much, yeah. He goes from Tennessee to Baltimore, and man. So those are your two Christmas Day games. Some just GM head coach stuff here, some vacancy stuff. We could start with the Giants here. Um, a lot goes on with them. Both teams really in New York right now, figuring out their future. Jets have already fired the head coach, they've already fired the GM. They've already interviewed two GMs so far, John Robinson and Thomas Dimitroff. We've heard a lot of coaches. There's been probably 10, 15 names tossed out there for coaching candidates. So we'll see what happens first with the Jets, whether they hire a GM first, hire a coach first, then GM. All that stuff still to be determined. But the Giants are really interesting because they have not fired their coach yet. They have not fired their GM. Brian Dable and Joe Shane in year number 3 are still have jobs, but with really 8 days left in the season, things are starting to heat up with Brian Dable and Joe Shane. Now, I've said this a lot. I think Brian Dable's a lot better of a coach than some make him out to be. I don't think he's as bad as this season has gone for the Giants. I think there's no talent on that roster. They don't have a quarterback. It's tough for a lot of coaches to have success when you're rolling out Tim Boyle, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock. I mean, every other week it's a different quarterback for this team. Daniel Jones as well, prior to his release, is a team that made the playoffs in 2022 under Dable. I think a lot of that was Dable. Last year was ugly. This year's ugly. It is tough to defend 2-15. I don't know. I still have a gut feeling, though, that both of them are back for 2025. And I wouldn't be against that. I just think what the Giants need to do is they need to either keep both of them or they need to fire both of them. They can't half this and fire Dable and then keep Shane or vice versa. Now, most are saying they would fire Dable and then keep Shane. You can't do that. You've got to either fire Dable and fire Shane, keep Dable or keep Shane. None of the other stuff. So I guess where are you right now? What is your gut that happens with the Giants here? Assuming they finish 2-15 and clinch the first pick.
I'm on board with. Well, are you saying you personally think they should keep both of them?
I would bring them back. I would bring them back, but I would not. Yeah, I would bring them back. But if they're going to fire one of them, like if they are going to move on, I would move on from both of them. They can't fire Dable and keep Shane. That would mess up. And we've seen the Giants do this before. You provide some examples, but that's where I'm at. I would keep them back. And to be honest, my gut does tell me, like, if I had a feeling, I do think they will come back. Definitely Shane's coming back. I don't know about Dable, but I would keep them back. I would bring them back to keep it short.
I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree where they're going to keep both. I'm going to agree where if they do keep both, you absolutely if you go one direction, it's both of them. But if they were to fire one, and I know that probably doesn't make sense what I just said, so I can go back over it. You get rid of Shane. But
Yeah.
here's my thing. You just mentioned it, like you're playing QB roulette almost all season. You don't have any weapons. You have neighbors, and it's like great. You found somewhat of a gem in Tyrone Tracy. Is Tyrone Tracy your starting lead 3-down back? I don't really think so. There's no talent with your weapons whatsoever. And then you look at and so like
Yeah.
all of that is out of Dable's control. If they had a quarterback that throughout the year that was consistently playing every single week, and they just look bad because everyone around looked bad, then I get it. Then it's like, okay, fire them. But it's like you're switching quarterbacks every week. It's almost like you never know who's going to get the start. You're waiting until Sunday, NFL countdown at 12 o'clock to let us know who's going to start for the Giants this week. Like it's no type of consistency, and you can't build any success in kind of how we were saying with the running backs when you're constantly swapping running backs. You can't build any momentum when you're going to keep switching guys in and out every single week. That's the one thing. But now we look at the GM side of it. You've made some terrible moves. Dable wanted a quarterback. You don't go get a quarterback. You let Saquon Barkley walk. You let Xavier McKinney walk.
Yeah.
You get rid of you have made terrible decisions. So it's almost like you got two strings of it. And if you look at it, you're like, okay, well, we can get rid of Dable because this, and that. The team isn't good. They can't find any success, all these other things. But then you look at all the moves that were made. Who would be successful? What head coach would be successful with everything that's lined up against Dable over these last few years? I mean, you just don't make, and you do, but you don't really. But you don't just make the playoffs one year. You go into, Minnesota, you upset a Minnesota team, and then after that, your whole team forgets how to play football. They have not set that team up to be successful whatsoever, and it's quite a shame with all the history in that market. Like the Giants are a big little market team.
Yeah.
With that market, the success that the history brings for the direction of this team to be going in right now, that's not the head coach. That is, GM and above making the terrible moves that they're making.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's way more on the GM than it is Dable. Dable took not a very good roster in 2022 and to the playoffs. I mean, they were good, but they weren't elite by any means. I mean, their number one receiver at that point was Isaiah Hodgins. And you also had Darius Slayton, some other guys who Slayton's still here, and Sterling Shepard if he's healthy. That was about it. Now you look at this roster. I mean, it's awful. It's just they're throwing out guys in the secondary and on defense that you've never even heard of. Like they're practice squad guys. And then you look at, the offense. I mean, Tyrone Tracy, he's been solid. He's not Saquon, but he's been solid for a rookie year. Neighbors, and then that's it. Like Wan'Dale Robinson is okay. Slayton's all right. Jalen Hyde doesn't do a whole lot. Like Daniel Bellinger is nothing. I mean, he's nothing special. These are just no names. And in the quarterback position's a disaster. And to me, I think in a way, making the playoffs in 2022 could have been in a way like a bad thing for the future wise, because I do think they rushed things a little bit. Like going out and trading for Darren Waller was like a rushed move. They were not ready yet to truly compete. They still needed another year or so of developing talent, all that stuff. And instead they went out and tried to make some win now moves when they were still not a win now team, because the gap between them and Philly were really, really bad. I think if they missed the playoffs year one, they would probably be much better off right now, because they would have never paid Daniel Jones. They would have never went out and traded for Darren Waller. Like they accelerated the process just because of one playoff win. And that's why I do believe that's kind of why we're here now. But yeah, I mean, Dable, the Hard Knocks, he was so obvious that he did not want Daniel Jones. Like when Joe Shane talked about how if the guy's not available at whatever they had, I think they had pick 5 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we're going to roll with Daniel. And there was a part of Brian Dable that died in that moment. Like you could just see on his face, no way. I have to run it back with this guy. No way. And who was the guy that gave him the $40 million contract? It was Joe Shane. Who was the guy that got rid of, let McKinney go, Saquon go? Joe Shane. So I don't know. I like Dable. I think Dable's a good coach. Now, he does have problems with his assistant coaches. Like, he's not the easiest guy to work for. But look, if they're winning, you can make it work because they were winning in 2022 and him and Wink Martindale were hugging each other and all that stuff. Once they started losing, the problem started to occur. But I still think the Giants would be making a huge mistake of not giving Dable a shot with a good young quarterback. This team, you can't tell me, if they kept Saquon and brought in Jaden Daniels, would not at least be a team fighting for a playoff spot right now.
And kind of backtracking before I get back into that point of what you said with 2020. I think people don't understand how much sense that makes of when you say, okay, well, making the playoffs is one of the worst things to do because they start making win now moves. And you look at it where you have a Philly and you have a Dallas. So you know we need at least 10 wins to be competitive. That's already one thing. 10 wins is hard. So now we're going to fast forward to looking at this year. And I know they've been bad this year, but you look at this year compared to, 2020, and let's just say things were kind of flipped where you're like, Dallas is a quarterback and a lot of injuries away from being, 10, 11 wins. Washington's playing good. Philly is Philly. So it's almost like you are so rushed and so eager to stay in the loop because it's at what point does this division not become the next NFC North where everybody is so good and your 8 games aren't good enough to do anything? So I think they kind of knew, Philly and Dallas were always going to stay on track when, as far as being successful, at least in the regular season. Philly can do it, in the playoffs. The other team forgets how to play ball. But both of these teams are going to be good in the regular season. We need it to at least be competitive. 9 and 10 wins. These other two are going to give you 11, 12, maybe even 13. Washington won't be bad for too long because Washington played some good ball as well before Jaden Daniels got there. So I think the Giants were just kind of pressing where it's like we need to stay in the loop with these other two teams and try to get that head start over Washington before they start to develop their guys and before they start to get good. Bad thing for the Giants is Washington just did it a lot quicker than we thought. We didn't think they would be this good in year one, and it just happened. So now, for them trying to make all these win-now moves in 2022, we fast forward going into 2025, you're kind of looking at it, and it's like that put you 2 steps backwards because now the gap between Dallas, who's going to finish third in the division, if you look at it again, so many injuries, Dallas they had it bad. Even a 7-win Dallas team right now, and not even just talking about record-wise, but you look at the third place Dallas team and you look at the last place Giants team, it's like there's no comparison whatsoever. They don't even come close to each other. So now you go into next year, Philly's going to be good once again. Washington's going to be good. Dallas is going to figure out they're going to get Dak back. Hopefully Jerry Jones makes some moves. Now you're a Giants team and you're just like, man, we can't compete with this. Like, what are we supposed to do? And if they want any chance of competing, and I don't think they will, but if they want any chance at trying to stay in the loop with the other 3 in the division, it's going to be through Dable and bringing in some pieces to help him because starting over and rookie quarterback, and I know you have your opinion on this, which I also agree with. Rookie quarterback and then a whole new offensive coordinator, but not affecting the rookie, but now affecting the elite neighbors, where it's like 2 offensive coordinators in 2 years. What are we doing? They're not going to be successful that way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. It's never – whenever you bring in rookies and a rookie quarterback, like it's never great, especially a rookie receiver like Neighbors, to then all of a sudden have him learn a new system in year 2. Totally new system. And another thing, too, is and I guess that could be the whole debate, I guess to go against this is like, if you draft a rookie quarterback and then you don't win next year, then you're going to fire Dable and change. Then he would have to learn a whole thing in 2026. And what are the chances you actually win with a rookie? And that's I guess, a counter debate to that, or to both of us right now. But yeah, I mean, like, I think in a perfect world, if they missed the playoffs in 2022, let's say, right, this would be kind of their year to make the playoffs because now they've had 2 bad years and a 1 playoff year. Realistically, you would year 1 miss the playoffs, you get rid of Daniel Jones. Who knows? Maybe then the 2023 draft, maybe you go out and, I don't know, you get your CJ Stroud, or maybe you get a CJ Stroud, like you would have traded up or something like that, or you were bad enough, whatever. Even last year, you had a chance to get Bo Nix. You could have traded up for a guy like Jaden Daniels, and you didn't. I just still find it fascinating. And this is a fireable offense. Daniel Jones threw 15 touchdown passes that year, and they gave him $40 million. 15 touchdown passes. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's not like this guy went out there and threw 40 touchdowns and had a huge year. He threw 15 touchdown passes. They gave him $40 million. Was a nobody last year and it was a nobody again this year, and now is with the Vikings. I mean, it's just it's crazy to me how they did that. You give Dable a good quarterback. Look what he's able to do with Josh Allen. Now, I know Josh Allen's still really good, but I don't think it would be fair to just completely take away what Dable was able to do with Allen. I mean, Allen had a lot of success under Dable, and Allen was Dable's first, or Dable was Allen's first OC. He's a good offensive mind. He needs a quarterback. I mean, nobody can do anything with Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito in this offense. And it wasn't Dable's decision to move on from Saquon. It wasn't Dable's decision to move on from McKinney. Those are Joe Shane. So I think they keep him. I think it's more so Shane. I think you keep Dable. You run it back. You give him a Shedeur. You give him a Cam Ward. You got all the options. Give him one of those guys. If it fails miserably, I mean, look, you see the Commanders turning around in 1 year. You see the Texans turning around in 1 year. It's not crazy to say they bring in a Shedeur. Let's say they draft Shedeur or Cam Ward. Let's say Cam Ward. You bring in Cam Ward. Tyrone Tracy gets better. You already have Malik Neighbors. His game's already going to be elevated. Same offensive scheme. And then maybe you go out and, I don't know, make a big splash for like a T. Higgins or somebody like that. And all of a sudden, boom, you look at that offense, you think to yourself, man, this offense can do some damage.
And
so
kind of a little more into that. I could be wrong, but I feel like, again, with the Giants market that hasn't been good, you do get an exciting rookie. Let's just say it is Sanders. That connection with Dion and a lot of these guys in the league, you do make a splash for T. Higgins, but you might have some guys, I don't call them lower tier guys, but some wide receiver 3s, some wide receiver 2s. That's kind of just like, so I don't know. I watched a lot of Shedeur. I love Deion Sanders. Yeah. Like, maybe do I go over to the Giants and kind of, see what's going on over there? So it's going to start with who they draft at quarterback first. And I think after that, it's a trickle-down effect, whether that's going to be good or whether that's going to be bad. But right now, I just don't think anybody in their right mind is going to sign with the Giants to go play with Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock.
No, not at all. 100% agree. And another thing, too, just about this whole thing and why probably keeping both of them is in the best. The last time the Giants have done this twice in the last 10 years where they fired the coach and kept the GM. When they fired Coughlin, they kept Jerry Reese, and they kept Reese for 2 years. They paired him with McAdoo. That was a disaster. Then they had Gettleman after that. Gettleman brought in Pat Shurmur, and they fired Shurmur, hired Joe Judge, and kept Dave Gettleman, and that failed. These arranged marriages where you fire the coach and keep the GM never work, especially for the Giants' sake here. We've seen it happen with the past 2 GMs where they fired their coaches and then kept the GM an extra 2 years, and it failed miserably. Same thing here with this situation. Dable and Shane, you either keep both of them or you let both of them go. And I think it's in the best interest to keep Dable, which would probably mean you keep Shane. You give Dable the quarterback, you give him some assets, you actually make the right moves, and you give him some talent and see what he can do, because he made the playoffs with no talent, and then that prompted Shane to do dumb stuff to try and make win now moves when it was a roster. Clearly, we all saw that night they got smoked by the Eagles. That was really, really far away. And that's another thing, too. Like, they've only gotten worse from that point. That was supposed to be, in a way, a wake-up call. You just got blown out by Philly. Okay, you got your nice win against the Vikings, but now you've got to get to that point. You've got to close the gap in the division, and they've only gotten worse. That's the GM, not the coach. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, Underdog picks, playoff stuff now. We can move on to. So
Let's get into it.
yeah, so current playoff standings. As of right now, you got AFC Chiefs 1, Bills 2, Ravens 3, Texans 4, Steelers 5. We talked about Chargers 6, Broncos 7. Colts can still get in. If the Broncos lose out, Colts win out, they can get in, which actually isn't crazy because the Broncos have the Bengals today and the Chiefs next week. And the Colts' next two games are the Giants and the Raiders, or the Jaguars, rather. So that's something to look for. NFC wise, Lions, Eagles, Rams, Falcons, Vikings, Packers, Commanders, then Seattle and Tampa on the outside looking in. Terrible loss last week by Tampa. That was a typical Todd Bowles no-show. I've experienced that too many times. What are some interesting matchups, I guess, right now for you as things currently stand?
I think is it today at 4:30? Is it Cleveland? I'm not Cleveland. Is it Denver and Cincinnati today?
Yeah.
That one's huge. I mean, Denver. We so surprised. I'm not gonna talk a lot into it, but we thought they were gonna be so bad. And right now they are sitting at the 7 seed. Cincinnati's at the 10 seed. And if you look at the standings here, I see on the bubble, you got Colts at 8, Dolphins at 9, Cincy at 10. They just need so much help. But
Yeah.
today a loss, a Cincy loss, like it's done and over with, it's you get ready to start doing mock drafts.
Yeah.
But a win today for Cincy, things get so interesting because now you're sitting at 8-8, Denver sitting
Yeah.
at 9-7. Colts should win this week, 8-8 for the Colts. Miami should win this week against Cleveland, 8-8 for the Dolphins. You're kind of just like, how is this stuff going to kind of line
Play
up?
out. Yeah.
But also for the Colts too, they can still win the division. I mean, Houston at 9-7, Colts are at 8-8. I don't know if they play each other the last week of the season, but like Houston's not safe in that 4 seed. So I think today, I mean, it kind of also sounds crazy. Why are we talking about a 7 and a 10 seed with this much implication? But depending on which way that game sways today, like that's a huge matchup that I think Cincy is going to win, which is going to kind of stir up the pot. But
Yeah.
basically, I think today is one of those. If Denver wins, they're in. I think it's that simple.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. If they win, it's pretty much it's all locked up. They control their own destiny. Same thing with the Chargers who haven't officially clinched yet. One other topic, actually, I completely forgot to get to. I just skipped over it. Coaching vacancies. I just realized we skipped over it. So to kind of backtrack back to where we were with the Giants, coaching vacancies. Obviously, there's still some teams that are, I mean, maybe fire their coach, maybe don't. We've already gotten obviously some in-season firings: Bears, Jets, uh, Saints. Believe those are the only ones.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, I mean, Jags are probably, Peterson's probably getting fired. Antonio Pierce is probably getting fired. Just talked about Cincy here for a little bit. Zach Taylor, maybe. I don't see it, though. Cleveland, maybe Stefanski is possible. Gerard Mayo, maybe, but it seems like he's going to stick around. Seems like Callahan in Tennessee is going to stick around. I don't know. I doubt Shanahan would get fired, but it's something to monitor. So we kind of have some rankings here. We have a list of some of the best coaching spots, worst destinations for these current vacancies. I guess you could start with maybe your best, and then we can kind of just go back and forth.
Depending on what happens in Dallas, I think if 7-8, they've been playing so much better. But just mixed things, you kind of see Mike McCarthy probably save his job. You see probably he hasn't. Jerry Jones, obviously in the media, probably just saying things to not have people speculating that McCarthy they talking. I don't know. I think best spot right now, if I'm looking for a head coaching job, it got to be Dallas. And we talked about him earlier, where so many injuries. So when you look at the pieces that they have and the guys that are hurt and how they look when they are, healthy, I know you have to go on a year by year basis, but we're talking about a team that was just 12-5 in 3 straight years and then had a down year with some injuries. What better place to go than that? The only
Yeah.
downside to it, the con of it, is you have Jerry Jones at your back making all the moves. And another example of when you got the GM that doesn't do all the right moves, it looks bad on the head coach, which I also think is this case for Mike McCarthy as well, that doesn't get speaked on enough. But I just feel if you're a head coach, I mean, you have a quarterback that's proven. I mean, you have one of the best wide receivers in football. You have so many pieces on defense that are so great. Why not go into that, kind of try to change a slight culture change? Doesn't need too much. Again, this is
Yeah.
a team we know how good they are. So you go in there, you kind of hopefully Jerry Jones takes a step back. You have a guy that and your quarterback that has proven himself, should have won MVP again. I'm gonna say that again, probably the 18th time I said that this show, but I'm sticking to it. MVP caliber quarterback, great weapons around him. You need some pieces here and there, but I think Dallas has to be the ideal spot right now if you want to win now.
Yeah, I agree. If Dallas would to fire, if they would to fire McCarthy, I think that is definitely an ideal spot. And we mentioned that too with Belichick when he was kind of still in the looking around, that his best destination would probably be with a team like Dallas with an already proven quarterback. You've got your number one receiver, somebody that can come in there and take full control. The biggest thing is Jerry Jones. That's the biggest thing is, do you want to deal with Jerry Jones? But you're going to get a healthy Dak back. You see what this team's doing even without Dak. You get the running back situation figured out. You get the right culture guy in here. I definitely think that is one of the top destinations if they do decide to move on from McCarthy. Do you want them to move on from McCarthy? I'm assuming yes, right? Or
I have changed over the last few weeks. It's actually so tough because when Dak goes down, they were kind of still in that race for the playoff race. When Dak goes down, this team could have quit. They could have just, it is what it is. Who cares? And now you look at an idiotic mistake by the special teams against Cincinnati.
yeah,
We're talking about a 5-game win streak. You go beat Tampa when Tampa, I honestly thought Tampa was going to run away with that game, or at least they should have. So you kind of look at the games where it's like, okay, Cincinnati came down to the wire. You should have won that game. You go beat a Carolina team. Record says 4-11, but Carolina's been playing some great ball. We talked about it last show.
yeah,
You beat a Tampa team that controls their own destiny, and Tampa's coming in there with a motive, and you make Baker Mayfield and that offense look like they've never played football before. They're
yeah,
playing so much. They're playing so much better, and it's like you can kind of tell that they aren't playing for themselves. They're not playing for incentives. They're not playing for a playoff spot. They're playing for Mike McCarthy. So do you want to bring a whole nother guy in there that has to kind of win the locker room all over, which isn't even a guarantee? It's tough, and I mean, as bad as Jerry Jones has been as a GM for my whole entire life, you can say, coaches go 12-5, not GMs,
yeah,
especially when they're not doing nothing. So it's tough.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'll also say this as one of the better destinations, I think too, one that's already opened, the Bears. I know as bad as it might seem right now this year, it's been ugly, but the chance to work with Caleb Williams, you give them the right offensive mind, I think they could do some good things. They've got a lot of talent. You've got DJ Moore, you've got Roma Dunze, you've got some pieces there. I think you obviously have DeAndre Swift as well. I think you give Caleb Williams the right coach. He hasn't had a bad rookie year. It has been great. It's been okay, I guess, but there has been a lot happening around him. I mean, you look at these other players, Jaden Daniels has stability around him. Drake May, sort of, I guess, but he's a little bit different. He sat to start the year. Bo Nix got a ton of stability. Caleb Williams is clearly in the worst situation right now with getting a coach fired. I mean, he's going to have to change coaches again, but you give him Ben Johnson. Pete Carroll's interested in that job. Some reports have said.
I
I
saw
think the
that.
Bears, yeah, I think the Bears are a likable job. I'll also even say if they fire Trent Baalke, the Jaguars could be intriguing because they've got Trevor Lawrence. Then again, though, the 1 year where Trevor Lawrence is right now, how he's been playing, the 1 year he had with Doug Peterson, they won one game, and that was because of Brandon Staley. One playoff game, rather, and that was because Brandon Staley is just stupid. So how much better, how much further are you going to get with Trevor? Like, that is a question. But the Bears definitely.
Are you ready for this? Let me cook. Now, remember, you remember my good friend who was a Jaguars fan. We talked about this a few weeks ago about kind of what the Jags should do, and basically the whole entire conversation. And I'm on board with you where I think that is a great place to be because Trevor Lawrence has not played great, but I think he obviously has not reached his peak or his prime. It's going to happen. So you kind of look at the weapons. Evan Ingram's a very good tight end. Brian Thomas had a very great year. He's going to continue to get better. Christian Kirk was hurt all year. So, you are missing a valuable piece. So this might sound crazy. And we were talking about it because he's like, whoa, like we want to win games all of a sudden. It's hurting our draft stock, this, and that. Well, how about this? You want an ETN gone, not only him, but a lot of Jags fans was like, this ETN experience is over. Why not trade ETN, try to trade up, even if it's just a spot? Because I'm sure there's some teams out there that will take a running back. I'm going to use the Raiders, for instance. Zamir White and can't remember the other guy. There's not your feature backs. Those aren't backs for success. So you just say a Raiders team, and I know they're kind of salt on who they want. A Raiders team, you trade Travis Etienne, you get a draft spot. You go get a Luther Burden. Now you got Luther Burden, Brian Thomas, and Christian Kirk as your wide receivers. T-Law has weapons. Bigsby, which, again, with this running back thing, it's so weird because you look at like a Bucky Irvin that's like, it's not a traditional back, but that's the way to do it. Tank Bigsby is not a traditional back. He's a do-it-all. So you got your Bigsby. Maybe you get a running back in free agency as an RB2 that can, be effective. Boom, there's your offense. The defense is absolutely horrible. I do agree with that. But is that more about the talent on the roster or is that the defensive coordinator? Yeah. That is something they have to find out. And obviously they have more than one first-round pick. So I'm on board. I think the Jags, as bad as it is, as bad as T-Laws look, that might be a spot, especially in that division where you look at Houston, who's not that good either with injury. They have injuries. But you look at that division, you can win now in that division. I like Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, Houston might finish with 9 wins. The Titans are a disaster, and the Colts are, with Richardson, are probably a 9-10 win team at best, maybe
8-9, 8-9.
Yeah,
give or take.
That's probably about So yeah, it is a win now division. And I was talking to when I had a Jaguars beat reporter on for the Jets Jags game. He was saying how you make a good point. The defense coordinator. He was saying more of the defensive struggles are on the defensive coordinator. He feels like they've got some piece. They've got Trayvon Walker. They've got Josh Hines now, and they've got some guys. It's just the scheme that they're running and the defense that he's implemented this year. He definitely feels like that's been one of the major weaknesses is the coordinator. So you get the right coaching in. They've got some talent. You get the right coaching in to coach up that talent. I think they can be much better than they are right now. And I guess for me to transition to one of like the worst destinations, I don't know if I want to say this is the worst destination because to me, I think the worst destination is probably the Saints. They're in salary cap. They're in the salary cap abyss again. They've got no quarterback. They're not bad enough to draft a quarterback. This isn't a good enough quarterback class. To me, the Saints. But the Raiders, I don't think is an attractive job either. And maybe for a couple reasons. Now, I know they do have, probably the number 2 pick, which is attractive, I guess. I know they have, they're in Vegas. NFL is trying their best to put a winner in Vegas. They want a winner in Vegas so badly. Brady's the minority owner. He's obviously going to be involved. But just to your point about the Jaguars division, look at the Raiders division. Which coach, if he had the chance to go work with a Trevor Lawrence, work with a Caleb Williams, go to the Cowboys, which coach would want to go to a Raiders team that's been in the cellar for years now and go to a division with a Broncos team that's rising up right now. You have a Chargers team that's coached by one of the better coaches in the NFL and Jim Harbaugh. And then, I mean, you're in a division with Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix. I mean, that is awful. So you're going to come in, not much talent on that team at all, draft a quarterback and hope that, I mean, come on now. I would not want to go to that division at all.
The only upside of playing in that division is when you look at this team and when they do match up in these divisional games, they're not getting ran over. So you kind of look at that and you go back and look at some of these box scores and those type of things. You're just like, well, you know, this is the Chiefs team you beat 2 years ago on Christmas. This is another Chiefs team you marched into Arrowhead and, you know, you were a snap too early away from winning that game. So you look at it and it's like you're not going in and you're losing by 30 every time you play one of these teams. So a head coach might say, is this, you know, we changed this. Now we're competitive in that division.
Yeah.
But that's 6 games. That is 6 games. I mean, I feel like without a doubt, if I'm a head coach, and I feel like it's almost like a college commitment where if I had a Cowboys hat, I had a Raiders hat, and I had a Jags hat, and it's like, hey, where are you going? I'm picking up that Jags hat every single time. I'd rather play Anthony Richardson twice a year, Will Levis / Mason Rudolph twice a year, and, you know, who's the other? And CJ Stroud twice a year because Houston's always do. Houston's like not running away with the division, so, you know, you always got a chance. Instead of me trying to go into Dallas, for instance, where we just said it was an attractive job, but you got Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels, you got Sirianni, who the NFL dislikes, but they're a very good team. Give me the Jags every single time.
Yeah.
Give me the Jags. I feel like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see, like, who goes where, like which place is going to be more attractive for like first time guys, which place is going to be attractive for like more veteran guys. Like, I think the Jets, to me, is a more attractive place for a veteran guy than a first time guy. I don't see any first time guy wanting to come here. But then again, like the Bears, that screams Ben Johnson, a chance to work with a rookie quarterback. The Jags, I think you can go either way with the Jags. I think they could use a young, innovative offensive mind because they've got some young pieces on that offense. You've got Trevor Lawrence in this prime. I think Jacksonville could be a young mind. The Raiders, to me, I think you're probably looking at a veteran guy. Like, I can't see a Ben Johnson going to the Raiders. I mean, in that division, you kidding me? I think they need a veteran coach that's been there and done that to already, because you're already in a division with Reed, Harbaugh, and Sean Payton. I mean, to be a first-time guy in that division, that's asking a lot. Just from a coaching perspective, forget the quarterbacks you got to face up against. Just the coaches you got to go up against, like you said, 6 times a year. So it's interesting. Any other teams on your list here that you would like to, discuss? The Jets?
I'm kind of I'm 50-50 on the Jets. It's like,
yeah,
you don't want to go there because, actually, before I get into that, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't there, that's an attractive destination. The fact that you don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do is, the determining factor. If it was no Rodgers and, we're in on, let's go get a quarterback in the draft. Let's use Tyrod as, a bridge. Let's see what Jordan Travis got. Then, I think you definitely go to the Jets. So many weapons on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
Division, again, we're kind of getting into that range of, okay, well, Buffalo twice a year. Who else do I have to worry about? Miami in September. Once Miami gets to November, there's nothing to worry about.
Yep.
So that's a place where you are fighting for a 2 spot in the division every year, considering Buffalo stays how they are. But with the 17 playoff, we're talking about the AFC now. You got 3 teams from the AFC West that's going to probably make the playoffs. So even a second seed, that's success. It's not like the old days where, it's 1 seed or you're not gonna make the dance. I think the Jets, with all they have over there, they could definitely make some noise in that division, make some noise in the AFC. But with Aaron Rodgers doing documentaries, and you never know what he wants to do on a day-to-day basis, I don't like that spot for anybody, if I'm being honest. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's just the ownership to me, I think, also plays a big role. I mean, I think ultimately the new GM and new head coach have got to come in here and make the decision on Aaron Rodgers. It can't be Woody Johnson making the decision. It can't be Rodgers forcing himself on the next coach or GM, whatever. It seems like Woody and Rodgers don't get along very well, which is okay, but it's still got to be the next coach and GM. I don't think the next coach and GM are going to want to bring in Rodgers, want to bring him back. I think he's too much baggage. But yeah, the whole Rodgers thing adds a very dark cloud over the Jets job. The whole ownership thing it does as well. But you mentioned, like, in terms of talent wise, for a coach, there's a lot of talent on this team that you can be excited to come and coach, right? You've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Brees Hall, you've got Quinn Williams. Sauce is a guy to me that could use some better coaching.
yeah.
Michael Carter, right? You've got Quincy Williams. Mentioned Quinn Williams already. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, who tore his Achilles. He's going to come back. You've got a future left tackle in Olu Fashion. You've got 4 offensive linemen under 27 years old that are all playing really well. So you've got a good foundation from an offensive line perspective. It's just figuring out, the Devontae Adams thing will be interesting. I think if Rodgers goes, it's going to be tough to bring Devontae back. I mean, Devontae wanted out of the Raiders because he never had much of a quarterback. Is Devontae going to want to play a year with a Tyrod or a Jameis Winston here with the Jets? I don't see that happening. So maybe you move on from Devontae, but you can always draft another receiver. I mean, Malachi Corley's been non-factor. Lazard's gone. So the receiving core could be thin next year. It could be look completely different. But yeah, the owner and the Rodgers put a damper on the job for sure. If you were telling me the Jets didn't have Rodgers and this was just some, I don't know, they had, let's say they went out and got Derek Carr or something, and they could move on from Derek Carr right now or keep Derek Carr or whatever. Or, I don't know. They have a bridge quarterback right now. And I think you can make the case for that to be more appealing than Rodgers. But we'll see. All right. Underdog picks.
Big week. This is a week.
Yes.
Oh,
Huge week. Yeah, massive week. Last week I went 1-2, you went 2-1. So as things currently stand, I'm 25-23, you are 26-22. 6 picks left. So got to make up some ground here over the next 2 weeks. 1 game separates each other. I went first last week, so since you won, I guess you can have the honors here.
all right. Let's see. Who did I go with last week? Okay. Well, I'm going to call this team my team of the year. I'm going Carolina Panthers. Every single time I put the Panthers on there, they've covered for me. Panthers, last time I checked, was plus 8.5. I don't know if it's changed to 8, but I'll still play it to 8. Is it 8 currently?
Yeah, 8 now.
I'm gonna go Panthers plus 8. Again, not gonna go too much of a long monologue about it. They've been playing some great ball. Tampa's defense is terrible. Last time these two played, I mean, Carolina should have won that game. Chuba Hubbard's out.
Yeah, he's on IR now.
I'm sticking Panthers plus 8. I'm sticking Panthers plus 8 because of the other matchups. I just don't like them too much. Give me Panthers plus 8. We're gonna go with Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos plus 3.5. I know we're talking about how big of a game this is for Cincinnati, but that defense is terrible. That defense is absolutely terrible. I think Bo Nix has a great game today. But the only thing with that, Denver doesn't run the ball too well. So I don't know, but I'm going to stick Broncos plus 3.5. This is a team I feel like, I think we mentioned it last week, where you look at this Broncos team and you're just like, oh, what are they like, 4 wins? And you look and you see they're in the playoff race. So I like Denver to cover that. And my last pick, I made this mistake once. Hopefully it's not a mistake again. I'm going to go Titans plus 1. I think Mason Rudolph is playing. And is it Jacksonville they're matched up with? Is it Jacksonville they're matched up against? Jacksonville they matched up against supposed to be some bad weather in Jacksonville this week. And I'm just not It's basically a mid off. It's just who's going to find a way to win. I honestly don't see Jacksonville running away with this. So give me Tennessee to win outright in Duval County.
All righty. All right. Wait, hold on a second. That is +1, right? Yes,
Yeah,
Titans
+1.
+1. All right. I'm in an interesting spot here. I'm just gonna start off. I'm gonna go Cowboys +7.5. It might not be the right move, but no Jalen Hurts. It's gonna be Kenny Pickett under center for the Eagles. We saw how that went last week. Cowboys are playing some good football. I think this is a low scoring Cowboys. I don't think they win, but I think it's a 17-14 type of game. They cover the 7.5. Don't think they win, but they cover. Also, there has been some news that have come out. Tua's doubtful tomorrow for the game. So I'm going to roll with the Browns. Tua still is going to try and play, but Tyler Huntley playing in place of Tua, I'm going to go Browns +3. I got to try and find a way to get creative here because I need to make up some ground. So Browns +3, Cowboys +7.5, and I'm stuck on my last pick. I'm torn between Panthers +8 or Titans +1. Either way, I'm only going to be able to make up a possible 2 games this week. I want to go Panthers. The Chuba Hubbard injury news does impact a lot. In my opinion, I feel like the Titans is probably this. The only thing is like I'm asking the Titans to win a football game, and that's asking a lot.
That's the problem.
The Panthers, all I'm asking for them is just be competitive. Just be competitive. So, this is risky. This could be the difference between 3-0 and 2-1 right here. Or this could be the difference between 0-3 and 1-2. I'm gonna go Titans +1. Titans +1.
If it makes it a little worse, we are both Titans +1, but
Yes.
I do see here that Tony Pollard is questionable for tomorrow. So that makes me
that makes matters great.
That makes me a little more nervous. But Mason Rudolph is getting a start.
Yes.
But Tony
Let him
Pollard
cook.
is questionable. Let's see. As long as it's not Will Levis cooking because he uses mayo and everything.
Yeah. Is that Broncos line 3 or 3.5?
Let's see. I hope it didn't change on me. Let's see. Broncos, it has changed to 3.
Okay, let me write that down.
I'm going to still play the Broncos.
Yes.
At 3.
All right. So Panthers +8, Broncos +3, Titans +1, and I'll go Browns +3, Cowboys +7.5, and I'll agree with you, Titans +1 as well. So we see. May the best picks win.
I honestly want to change from Titans +1 to Browns +3 as well if Tyler Huntley's playing, but
yeah.
Oh, Saints +1. No, I'm not going to the Raiders. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to trust Mason Rudolph. Yeah, if it was Will Levis, then I would never. But I think I'm pretty confident.
Yes. All right. Another week. Any closing thoughts?
Just a lot of football. We got some bowl games on, college football playoff this week. So enjoy all the football this week, and we will be back next week.
Yes. We'll be back here next week. Final week of the regular season before the postseason begins. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.